Good morning, everyone. My name is Dilia Salinas. I am the event coordinator here at TV Tech, and today we are very happy to announce that we have a webinar about Zero Trust, and is sponsored by FI Group. FI Group is a research and development finance consulting that helps manage and grow innovation worldwide. Their UK team is made of specialists and made in the management of R&D, tax relief, and R&D grants, suitable for any business from startups to largest company. For more about FI Group, you can go to their website. Also, we have in the panel, we have people from Fortinet, as we have Patrick Grillo. Also, we have from Brightwell Consulting, as is Martin Realize, sorry. And also we have Paul German from Certes Network. Can you say hi, please?
Hello.
Good morning. Hello, everyone.
So basically what we are doing today is asking some questions about Zero Trust, and from that, they are going to explain what is going on. What I have to say about each of the members, we have Patrick Grillo, that is responsible of creating and evangelizing key messages about Fortinet cybersecurity solutions, able to cut through the half-truth and myths to provide clear consent information about Fortinet customer and partners. Also, we have Martin, that is a natural solving problem, challenges that open opportunities for transforming through creating a culture of change, understanding, and improving productivity through the intelligence use of technology that meet the goals at Brightwell Consulting. And Paul is an expert customer-focused CEO, currently focused on software-defined security space with Certes networks and delivering a transport and network independent security overloading, enabling their customer to truly embrace the zero trust concept. I'm sorry for my stopping. This is basically, I'm a bit nervous because it's a huge event that we have right now, and I want to make it right. So the first questions, let's go to start. I would like to know a bit about zero trust. So the first question will be, why is zero trust seen as a crucial component of every company security strategy rather than continuing to rely on the trusted devices and users from the traditional perimeter security mechanisms? Can we start please with, I don't know who wants to start, probably Patrick, do you want to start?
Sure. I'm more than happy to start. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today. I mean, the reason why we need something like Zero Trust is simply because the networks themselves have changed. Look at us today. Some of us may be inside our company premises, some of us may be outside of it. But I know personally, on any given week, I could be working from home, working from a customer's location, or working from my office. What used to be a fairly static environment of users sitting at their desk in front of their computers, accessing applications which were resident in the data center, has changed. So users and devices are all over the place. Applications are all over the place. And this has created what we typically call an edge, which is a demarcation point, so to speak, that used to be, this perimeter used to be reasonably well fixed. Now it's completely shattered. And so because of that, this idea of trusted and untrusted is no longer valid in that environment. So about 10 years ago, one of the analyst firms in the industry came out with this concept of zero trust. And it's like something we, the panelists were talking about a few moments ago before we came on air. Frequently, concepts come into the market before the technology is able to support them. And I think zero trust is part of that consideration. We are at a good place where there is an intersection of the need for zero trust as well as the availability of security technologies to actually create it.
If you wouldn't mind, I'd just like to supplement what Patrick said there in terms of, I think, agree with every point that was made, but also, we are in a situation in the industry where the security mindset and the security technologies just aren't delivering against the needs of our customers. You know, we're seeing increases in threats and risks resulting in actual breaches of business environments. So you know, we really need to look at the problem and think about how to solve it differently, rather than trying to apply the same techniques and technologies in the same way in hope that the current mindset you know, in some way continues or starts to work. So for me, zero trust is very much something that is needed. It's a different way to or a new way of thinking about how we're going to secure our environment. And you know, Patrick, you touched on a really good point there about ownership and trust. You know, we used to work in a world where actually the networks over which our users and applications were talking were owned by the business using them, and therefore we could implement a concept of trust, because if we own something, we manage and control it, and therefore we hope we can trust it. But obviously now with the new world of the new ways of doing things, as Patrick touched on around mobility, you know, hyper mobility, you know, people being able to work from anywhere, applications being able to be located anywhere with cloud technologies, this concept of ownership and trust has gone completely out the window. So we need to be able to still implement a concept of trust, but in a way that is elastic and moves with our, you know, with the things that we need to be able to trust, i.e. our users and the applications and data that they're accessing. Sorry, Martin, I think I cut across you there.
No problem. Thank you very much, Paul. Again, just to extend, we've touched on how zero trust isn't a new concept. In fact, 1994, I think it was first coined in a thesis. Again, Patrick, you touched on an analyst group, so Forrester, I think it was 2010 that brought it out originally. They've since re-engineered it and added to it to make it stronger as technology evolves, and I think that's key. Technology has been moving with the times. Google set up Beyond Core back in 2009, so technology's been there, but you've had to have a large budget or starting from the ground up to be able to achieve it. But what it's been doing over the last 13, 14 years has been building a model of zero trust around infrastructure, applications, data centers, so that as we've been moving to the cloud or moving workloads to the cloud, that's where we focus the effort on, because that's easiest. We know the world has changed in the last 2.5 years. So there's been an accelerator poured onto what we need to do for the end user and the devices, and that's where technologies had to shift. Vendors have done a great job in bringing out new capabilities to help those people bring capabilities to market or help change the way that they're working. And I think that's what we're going to be touching on today. How are we enabling end users to be a lot more mobile, as you've touched on, but how do we do that securely? And that goes well above and beyond just looking at the device themselves. If we touch on zero trust, it's not just one model anymore. Forrester have their own, NIST have their own, Gartner have their own, and I think the most adopted one right now is NIST. And last year, the US government set out a mandate. Joe Biden says all government entities now must conform and roll out zero trust. So it's got the backing, it's now got the momentum, it's now got the maturity to be adopted by the wider market.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I wanted to touch on from your question, you know, you talk about perimeter security there, and I think we'd all agree, you know, Martin and Patrick, that actually when you think of perimeter-based security, the big problem with that, it's like building a wall around your home. You know, it's from the outside it might look secure, but the moment somebody's over the top of that wall and they're inside, they've got open access to everything. And I think that's the biggest concept that we have to get people to understand, that, you know, you can't just build a wall around something and think that that's going to stop any potential breach. You know, when we look at the statistics around, you know, the number of compromises that come from internal locations, whether those are, you know, VPN connected users, or whether, you know, that's actually a physical port that's within your environment that you know are the conduits for breaches or attacks to come into your environment. You know, the concept of perimeter is broken, and Patrick, you know, you used a really good term, this concept of, you know, we're creating these edges now, and the edge for me is very dynamic, or two things, very dynamic. You know, it can move, but also it's something where there's a lot of different types of edge out there. So it's down to interpretation. So.
Absolutely, that castle and moat is well and truly gone. Again, in the early days, micro-segmentation was the real driver, but again, it was looking at a network and application data center layer. Back in 2003, Jericho was talking about that deperimeterization, as they called it, again, which was the early analogy of what you're talking about, and how we continue to move forwards. It's really important, and it was great to see that when Forrester, for example, I think it was their extended zero trust architecture that they released, they finally included identity into there, which gives you the ability to put granular control regardless of location, device, and entity. And now it's really great to see that that is the foundation of pretty much every zero trust architecture that's out there.
Well, yeah, we're seeing that now with the one of the big buzzwords in the industry right now is ZTNA, Zero Trust Network Access,
Yeah.
because it's finally, and I'll be a bit cynical about it, with zero trust being being told what you should do without being told how to do it, but zero trust is finally zero trust network access is finally a tangible technology that's reasonably easy to understand how it works and what value it brings.
Yeah, and I think. Oh, sorry, Martin, go ahead.
I just think that it's ironic that it's called zero trust network access, but it's got nothing to do with the network. It's the application layer.
Absolutely, but it's the
Absolutely
way
right.
it is.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's about making sure that that there's a familiarity here with the people that are responsible for rolling out these zero trust frameworks or these zero trust architectures, because sometimes in technology, and I think this touches on some of the things we were we were talking about before we went live. Sometimes it's a it's a step too far for businesses to be able to adopt new ways of doing things. So we have to have this level of comfort or familiarity, and I think that's why some of the terms that we use, as you said, Martin, zero trust network access, when in fact we're not the network has now become, certainly the transport network has now become irrelevant, and now it's all about building trust around users, devices, applications, data, those sorts of things. But also we need to remember that zero trust is, for me, is not something you do once. It's not a technology that you deploy. For me, the first, the very foundation of zero trust is mindset within the organization, because what we need to make sure is that the foundational aspect of zero trust is mindset change, and then you start to build on those foundations with the technology choices that you make to reinforce those choices around mindset.
It's good that you mentioned that it goes well above beyond technology, because again, if you look at NIST standard 800-207, then they've got three principles: the continuous verification. So you don't just do it once; you check, recheck, make changes as needed as your business changes. You limit that blast radius, because you've got to assume breach as well as part of zero trust. It's not just praying in the technology; it's assuming that something will go wrong. If someone wants to get in and they're persistent enough, they will find a way in. So what happens when it goes wrong? And that then takes you onto the automation of collection and response activities. So it's not just praying in the preventative measures, it's how do you then take it through the rest of the incident lifecycle? How do you detect, respond, recover? So it's looking at it as a complete architecture and not in isolation.
That's great. Thank you very much all for the answers. I think that we have learned a lot about what you have to say about zero trust and the different perspective of it. I would like to know also which are the biggest challenges of these new architectures or new systems that we're using. I don't know if you can tell me something about it, please.
Well, I mean, something that Paul brought up is the mindset. I believe it was Paul, about getting people to buy into this. You have a lot of people in networking and cybersecurity that, like with most things in life, are resistant to change, and that's part of the big piece. The other part of it is, as we're slowly moving from conceptual to reality with zero trust, and you have the frameworks that Martin pointed out. You have some technologies like ZTNA coming out, microsegmentation, which has been around for a while, but the issue, and even with a framework like NIST or any of the other ones, or any of the other analysts coming out and saying this XYZ, whatever it might be, is a zero trust framework. The issue is the implementation of it. Because if you're going out and you've been dealing or you continue to deal with 20 to 30 different vendors, each one with an individual product that may work exactly as it was supposed to, it was never designed to work in a collaborative environment. And so understanding that not only do you have a technology or a concept that will address some of these issues, you also have to change how you go about implementing those technologies, and sometimes fundamentally how you choose and regard vendors of who should be doing what and how many of them should I be managing. So it's also reducing the complexity to make sure your efforts to implement a zero trust environment can actually be successful.
And if I can just extend on that, we've touched on technology there, but it's really important to understand that zero trust doesn't necessarily mean throwing out everything that you've spent money on over the last 5 to 10 years. It's enhancing what you've got and building the foundation. There are some great vendors out there, Fortinet being one of them, that have a large product catalog that start to deliver capabilities around zero trust. Microsoft, Palo Alto, other vendors that are taking technology such as XDR to be able to help enable that. But it's very rare that someone find themselves in a position to be able to just go out to market and buy a best of suite platform rather than take themselves from where they are at the moment, which is definitely brownfield, and make the investments in what they've got. So the challenge in my eyes is understanding where you are and how you can move that forward. Once you've figured that out, it's going to be down to user change and user adoption. We know that if we try to change user behavior, that's always the hardest. There was a recent survey by Microsoft to suggest that less than 22% of all of the users in Azure Active Directory have MFA enabled right now, and that's a simple user behavior to change. So if we can't make those user improvements, it's still going to be a very hard technology to adopt if we're looking to change any other way in which a human has to interact with their computer.
Yeah, I think that's a really key point there, because I just made a note while you were talking, and my note was that when zero trust for me is about quick wins. How can we in terms of the zero trust journey enable our customers, the industry, to make some very quick wins from their move to through that zero trust mindset to starting to deploy technology. And when you look, it's that traditional sort of 80-20 rule. 80% of your risk will be carried by either 20% of your users, your applications, or locations, if we can use that term. And if we can get people to understand where, from a risk perspective, where is the majority of my risk sitting right now, and how can I mitigate 80% of my risk? Let's not go for 100%. Let's start with 20, 40, then 60, and get to 80, and that journey start to mitigate that risk, so that that 80-20 rule, actually we can work on mitigating 80% of our risk by addressing 20% of the functions, the security functions, or the risk areas within our environment. And like you say, multi-factor authentication is an absolute must do. All some of the advanced stuff, in the background, that's what you do when you've done the basics first. And that's what I mean when I'm talking about those quick wins.
I think just rounding it off, then, it's one of the biggest challenges is letting everyone understand that it's not a silver bullet. There is no one silver bullet. There is no one technology. It's a wide sweeping change to how we think about security, and then how we start to make change and implement it over time.
So one of the things that I wanted to touch on as well was it's really key for integrate, and Patrick, you touched on this, for customers to understand the suite of vendor products that they have within their environment, and how they're using them. It's also key for us as vendors to make sure that we've got documented integrations that help customers have a more seamless experience with our products, because there are best of breed technologies out there, and what our customers are looking for is, how can I have best of breed in in all of the security functions, and once I deploy those, how can I integrate them all together to make sure that I'm driving as much value as I can. But Martin, you touched on sort of analytics earlier, visibility and analytics. How can I make sure that all of this qualitative data that I'm generating, how can I push that into a visibility technology, that enables me to be able to understand where I'm at very quickly in terms of my security posture, understand where I need to react and remediate, so that I can continue on that continuous life cycle of, as you said, reacting and remediating to any non-conformance or non-compliance events in my environment.
Yeah, there are two terms that we use when talking about this, and the first one is convergence. And that to us is the things that had traditionally been layered on top of each other, the network with its security infrastructure, those need to be converged, so that you're bringing technologies into a single device, regardless of the form factor, so that the network now has awareness of what's going on. That's the first step. The second step is consolidation, is to eliminate the excessive number of vendors that you have, turning more towards a platform approach, reducing the complexity, and at the same time improving your ability, your visibility, and your ability to respond. I mean, this is what Gartner came out with at the end of last year, this concept of a cybersecurity mesh architecture to achieve part of those. That was more of consolidation. They don't touch on convergence. We believe that's the part that they have left out. That is, these two halves must absolutely be equal.
And again, Patrick, touching on your point of taking that platform approach, that does make the visibility and analytics that Paul's taken very easy, but it isn't the only approach. And there are a number of great SIEM technologies out there that do give you the ability to pull all these data sets together. Granted, you don't quite always get the same ability to have the context, the understanding, the ability to link multiple technologies together to be able to drive the insight and machine learning, but there are other mechanisms. So if you do have an investment, if you're looking for a day one step forward, then there are other ways to supplement what you've got. I'm an advocate, or we're an advocate of Microsoft's technology stack, so I would absolutely say that a platform approach is the right thing. However, it's just not usually achievable as a big bang approach day one. So it's, how do we move forward?
No, and consolidation is actually a select number of platforms that can work together, because no technology vendor, regardless how broad their product portfolio is going to be able to supply every technology a customer needs when they need it or is appropriate to that customer. So it's reducing the number of vendors you're working with, and each one of those taking a platform approach, and those platforms have the open APIs and interfaces where they can actually work together.
Sorry, Paul. After you.
No, please.
I'm just saying, playing together is absolutely critical to ensuring that a company has visibility. Every CISO, every head of IT, every head of security would love a single pane of glass. So having that singular visibility of risk and understanding of context would be ideal. So having, as you said, just a select number of vendors where I can manage them all from one pane of glass would be fantastic, or at least a view of it from one pane of glass, if not managing. Sorry, Paul.
No, no, I couldn't.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I couldn't agree more. So we'd like to get to this holistic environment where we have, as you say, Patrick, open APIs that provide a high level of integration between technology stack capabilities. But as you say, Martin, with the ability to deliver full stack visibility and analytics capabilities to whether it's the CISO, whether it's the chief data officer, whoever, to be able, because really what we're looking to do is to minimize risk, but where there is risk, be able to highlight that very quickly to the people that need to know, so that they can react and remediate, so that any risk that is introduced into the environment is mitigated, both in terms of scope and in terms of time within the environment.
I think with what we're saying right now, we're basically just clearing some myth, because probably some people is saying that is not affordable for many companies because of the expensive cost. And also some people said is very complex. So what we're saying is exactly clearing those myths. I don't know if you, is there anything else that you want to add to that questions?
I think Martin made the point very well, which is it's not a case of you know organizations not doing zero trust today but doing zero trust tomorrow in terms of technology. It's a case of it's a journey. It's an approach. So taking that mindset first, that's the first change, but then understanding where you can achieve those quick wins and utilize the technologies that you have within your environment today and drive more value from them. I mean, Martin, I'm sure you'd agree that a number of the vendors you're working with, whilst they are all taking zero trust principles and putting them into their technology. So it's about driving more from the current vendors that you have today to drive that short-term value that we were talking about, so that we can have those quick wins and then make further decisions through your journey to be able to move to that zero trust framework or architecture. And then when you look at spend, every organization is going to look at budgeting and spending as a key area of constraint, because it's not a case of just throwing money at this concept. You've got to understand it first and then make the right budgeting decisions for your organization over time, so that money's spent in the right areas and that you're weighing your spend against the mitigation of risk in your environment.
The the point of cost there is a key one in my eyes. If we talk about security on its own, it's never going to get the budget. Just asking for more money never works. One thing that we do with a lot of our customers is try to understand the business strategy, the business drivers. Actually, where can cybersecurity help enable digital transformation for, sorry for using the buzzwords, but how can we help enable your business to move forward, and how can security underpin that? Because then that helps, one, unlock a budget, but two, allow us to align to a business goal. So if we're asking or trying to demonstrate value or an outcome that security drives, well, absolutely there it is. You're looking to do X, Y, and Z, whether it's growth, whether it's a new market, whether it's a new product capability coming to market. If security can underpin that and the investment can come off the back of that, then it becomes a much easier conversation to say, I'm going to spend some money on this because it does this for the business. So it's looking at it not just from a please so I can have some more money.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and that's why I use the term risk a number of times, because when you can equate a security spend to a mitigation of risk, risk holds a monetary value, right? So if you can turn around and say, for argument's sake, we're carrying $100 million worth of risk, but I need $10 million worth of additional security spend to mitigate that risk, then okay, that's a finance decision that can be made. But it's the right way to ask the question, rather than, as you say, can I just have more money to make us more secure? It's a non-starter in terms of a business discussion.
Well, what can I do? Sorry, Patrick.
No, thank you. I was going to say, and that's been a fundamental change, certainly in my working lifetime, that before it was technology for technology's sake, whether we're talking about networking or security. And now it's about enabling business objectives, whether you call it digital innovation, digital transformation, or even digital acceleration. I don't really care. It's the idea that organizations are adopting technology to achieve business goals. And those technologies absolutely have to be secured. They may work and you may get something, but you're not going to achieve the ultimate results that you're looking for. And so, it is a fundamental change, both with organizations, but as well with security vendors as well. It's not the shiny new object. It's not the silver bullet. It's how are you going to enable my business plans?
There are things that businesses can do for free to take a step forward. I think Microsoft have 60+% of the collaboration market, so you can guarantee that they have 60% plus of the authentication and identity market. Just putting in good practices, starting to define separation, role-based access control, privilege management, and dare I say MFA, you're starting to build the premise and footprints for what you can then put on top when you start to implement some of the things like ZTNA that require policy management that link back to a directory of some sort, whether it be for a user or a device, which is going to likely to be Active Directory. And that's free. You're already using it. You're already consuming it. It's just how do we make those changes and start that implementation now?
Thank you very much. One more question I would like to know also, which are or what are the cons of the zero trust? Because, for example, there is some people that says that when the person or the engineer who introduce or implement this can vulnerate the security. So I would like to know from your perspective, what do you think about this myth?
Well, I think it's a myth to begin with. And again, if we were having this conversation 10 years ago, there would be a certain degree of validity in that argument. But the way the way the technology has caught up with the requirement, are there teething pains? Of course there are. There are with any change like this, and getting organizations to think differently about how they do things. And we have something going on with an evolution of where we work and how we work, the hybrid work model. That's part and parcel of it. But I disagree with somebody who says it's complicated, so therefore I'm not going to do it. In today's threat landscape, within the confines of available budget, can you afford not to do it is really the question.
And my slant on that question is that the implementer is the risk. So that comes back to the administrators, doesn't it? And for me, that comes back to the same underlying principles. If we're still allowing administrators full access from their usual desktop accounts, they're not implementing privilege access management or just-in-time access, then yes, there's a risk. But that risk is there regardless of whether you take zero trust architecture or not. That's just an inherent risk of the business due to poor design.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot to our customers about this concept of separation of duties, right? And it's basically the principle that you can't have, one person with the keys to the kingdom. It's understanding, who needs access to what, and then ensuring, as you said, Martin, through things like policy, Active Directory, integration, things like that, understanding what do people need access to, and making sure that they have access only to what they need access to. And in terms of privileged access management, anyone that does have a level of privilege within the environment, making sure that there's the relevant controls in place where when somebody logs on with a privileged account, that maybe that access is being monitored, that we're doing things like geolocation checks to make sure that we're creating fingerprints of where when we talk about people working anywhere, where is this user who's privileged, where are they accessing the environment from, and in terms of creating a fingerprint, is this within their normal usage profile? And if it's not, let's get them off the network as quickly as we can, or get them away from the environment as quickly as we can. Sorry, Martin.
That comes back to your visibility point, doesn't it? It's bringing all that information together, whether it's the end user, whether it's authentication, whether it's the device, trying to build a picture. You've touched upon geolocation. Well, if that user logs in London, but 20 minutes ago they were in, I don't know, Ghana, Europe, then that's impossible travel. So at least having the insight and the information there to be able to take an action off the back of that. That could be an automated action using SOAR. So I'm instantly going to reset that user's sessions. I'm going to force an MFA prompt, or I'm going to be as harsh to say that actually that user account's disabled until I take further investigative action. It's having that insight and the ability to be able to, I say with SOAR, it's leveraging that integration, those open APIs again, to be able to take immediate action, reducing that risk to the business.
So we can say that zero trust is trustable.
When
One more
done
question.
properly, yes.
Some words, yeah. So the most important question that I would like to do to conclude this webinar is to know which is the future of the zero trust. What do you think that is going to be the next step now?
Well, it will continue to evolve. That's for sure, as we've seen over the last several years. Zero trust in some ways is Forrester put the term to it to describe a concept that they thought networks needed or organizations needed to achieve to secure their businesses. And what we're seeing now, we've had microsegmentation. We've had now with ZTNA coming into the mix, multi-factor authentication. Maybe there are still some technologies that need to be refined or need to come out of the ether and actually become reality. But for the most part, it's the integration between these technologies, the management, the visibility, and underpinning all of it is a source of threat intelligence that's in lockstep with the threat landscape itself. Because we saw in December, we saw a recent massive attack with this log4j that you need these let me put it a different way, I'm sorry. These technologies are static. The threat landscape is very dynamic. And without a source of threat intelligence to keep those technologies up to date with what happened yesterday and might happen tomorrow, zero trust is going to fail. Any technology will fail if it can't keep up. And so for me, that's the biggest thing, is how well the vendors are supporting what they're putting out in the market and making sure that through their own threat research and collaboration with other organizations, they're keeping pace with the threat landscape itself.
Paul, do you want to go next?
Yeah, okay. So I couldn't agree more with what Patrick said, but I'm going to just add a little bit in terms of, when we answer this question, we look at what's next for the implementers of zero trust frameworks and what's next for the vendors. For the vendors, it's all about ensuring that it's deployable, their technologies are deployable, and that it can be integrated, deeply integrated with other vendors' technologies out there to provide that seamless usability by the end customers. For the end customer, or for the user of a zero trust framework, they've got enough work in front of them now, probably for the next 5 to 10 years, in terms of actually deploying. They've made the mindset change. Right, they're now in the realms of taking advantage of those quick wins that we were talking about earlier, and then it's about how do we go from quick wins to actual meaningful steps forward to become more secure through the use of integrated technologies, zero trust concepts that may be added to where we're at today. So again, touching on Patrick's point, if people think that zero trust is a static thing, it's with a binary outcome, which is I'm not doing it today, but I'm going to be doing it tomorrow. That's never going to be the case. It's something that, touching on Patrick's point again, is dynamic, always evolving. So it's an evolutionary path over the next 5 to 10 years.
And if I'm just going to round that off, again, completely agree with Patrick and Paul. Patrick mentioned threat intelligence having to underpin everything that's been done, and Paul touched on the people element. If we look at post-implementation, people need to be able to, or you need the people there to be able to manage and run this. If we're, again, touching on one of the points we've said throughout, that singular visibility, that single framework, that single interaction, we've got to be able to reduce the people and the skills and the amount of resource needed to be able to maintain and continually develop this. We know we've got a skills gap in the market, so we don't want to be exacerbating that. We want to make life easier for the defenders of enterprises. But in terms of things next on the horizon, or things that still need to improve, I still think there's a gap in cloud security posture management, how that's incorporated with zero trust. We put a lot of preventative technologies into certain elements to try and correct that or prevent it, but there is nothing there that's doing the auditing, the accountability, or at least highlighting where things have gone wrong. Outside of humans being phished, for example, cloud breaches due to misconfiguration are one of the largest attack vectors, but it's not something that is yet fully defined in zero trust architecture. And I know I've touched on MFA. If we can make things an awful lot easier through passwordless, then I think that would be a great step forward. So I think there are areas that need further development and refinement for zero trust to be fully successful.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else that you would like to say, any of you?
I'd just like to say thank you to the panel for having me today, and thank you, Patrick and Paul, for the conversation.
Very much so.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It was a very good conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, it was great. I thought that I knew something about zero trust, but now listening to you, I know there is a huge topic that we have to talk about. There is a lot of information, and it's great to having you in here because you have been opening my mind about the knowledge, and that's great. That's something that we would like to share with the audience. Also, I would like to thank you all of you, the audience that are watching this, and just invite you for the next webinar will be on 29th of March, just to let you know that you can sign in our website. Thank you very much for all the attenders and for all the panel members. Thank you very much and have a good day. Bye.
Goodbye.
all.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Cheers.